Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Liz and today is going to be a comparison between the Ancestry DNA versus the 23andMe DNA. First we're going to talk about the Ancestry DNA, then we're going to talk about the 23andMe, and then we're going to compare both of them. So as far as I was concerned before taking the DNA test, I believed I was Puerto Rican and Cuban. I knew I was probably some type of black, African American, or some type of Caucasian, white, whatever you want to say. I primarily would tell people I'm Puerto Rican and Cuban. My mom's Puerto Rican and my dad is Cuban. So I received the DNA testing from Ancestry a few years ago, and it was like a Christmas present, and I was like, I really want this kit. It was like $100, so I was like, okay, let me get it done. Let me see what I am, this, that, and the third. And then fast forward to now, I'm seeing a lot of people doing the 23andMe DNA testing, and I'm like, ooh, like why is that one $200, and what's entailed with everything that's tagged along with that price tag, because $200 is a lot. Like, where are you getting that from? So as far as collection samples of my DNA, I didn't obviously film that, but I will go over the process. It's the exact same process for the 23andMe testing. I will show you what I received in the mail. So obviously you get it in the mail, it comes in this little box and it's neatly packaged. It's just a funnel right now. Obviously I had to turn in my saliva collection for them to test it. So it does come with this booklet, and it does show you how to collect the sample and whatnot. So it comes with this little tube, and it comes already with the funnel attached. In the top of the funnel there is a liquid, so once you're done collecting your saliva sample, you push down on the funnel and it'll release the seal for the liquid in the funnel to release into the tube collection, and it'll mix together and then it'll preserve the saliva. There is an app for both 23andMe and Ancestry. So you register your kit. On the tube itself there is a barcode that you register with it. After you finish collecting the sample and you break the seal for the liquid in the funnel to release into the tube, you screw off the funnel. That's why I still have this. And you screw on the cap to close the tube itself. And then the last step is pretty much you put it back into the box, to the same box that it's delivered in is the same box that gets sent back out. Now that I've talked about the collection sample, let's talk about Ancestry. So with Ancestry, same exact process. I think it took about 3 weeks for me to receive my results, and let's just go over that right now. So if you see me looking down, I'm looking down at my notes. So for this one, it's going to be a pretty quick, rundown of what I received. So with Ancestry, every region that pops up as a result for your DNA, they do give it like a little historic information about that region and how your ancestors are traced back to that. So let's just get right into it. So I'm going to pop up a chart right here or wherever it makes space, and I'll show you the pie chart I created from the results. You're able to print your own results as well, but I personally wanted to make my own pie chart. I'm such a nerd, I know. But anyways, so a huge chunk of my DNA is from Spain and Portugal. So 27% is from Spain, 21% is Portugal, 13% Nigerian, 11% Cameroon, Congo, Western Bantu peoples, 8% is indigenous Puerto Rico, 4% is Benin or Togo, another 4% is Senegal. I'm going to apologize right in the middle of it if I say the names incorrectly, because I feel like I might. But I'm sorry, I'm awful at pronouncing names of any kind. Humans, locations on a map, my own name, not gonna lie about that one. That's why I told people to call me Liz. I couldn't pronounce Elizabeth or Elizabeth. Why am I going off on a tangent? Anyways, yeah, sorry if I mispronounce any of these names. So 2% from Ireland, 3% from Ivory Coast or Ghana, 1% from Eastern Europe and Asia. So as far as Eastern Europe and other similar regions under that umbrella, like Eastern, whatever, Western, whatever, they do give you subcategories of the regions that your ancestors are traced back to. So I'm only going to name a few because there's like 10 or so for this one and another one coming up. So Poland, Czech Republic, Austria, Russia, Hungary, Serbia, Ukraine, Bosnia, stuff like that are also within the same region. Okay, so 1% European Jewish, 1% Middle East. Again, they give me different regions. So it's Egypt, Iran, Oman, Syria, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Yama, I'm sorry. Oman, UAE, Lebanon, and Israel are included in the 1% Middle Eastern region. Y'all, this is gonna keep going down, I swear to God. I'm sorry. So another 1% is from Northern Africa. The regions include Morocco, Western Sahara, and Algeria. I'm sorry. Another 1% is from Norway. Another 1% is Scotland. Another 1% is also from Wales. Yeah, you're gonna see this pen in this video the whole time. I'm so sorry. As far as DNA goes, this particular section is not included in the DNA breakdown, but it is associated with my DNA. So for instance, Puerto Rico is associated with my DNA, and the category is basically associated communities. So it did show migration to Puerto Rico. So a quick comparison. So Ancestry does allow you to purchase some personality traits for $20 more for only 26 traits. So I'm not breaking it down, but it's like less than $1 per trait, which I think is a bit much. Ancestry also does allow you to try to track down other people, kind of, sort of, who, like, for instance, I tried to look for my father's birth certificate from Cuba, but you had to pay to unlock a bunch of stuff. My father at the time didn't have this paperwork. Now he does, but at the time I was like, oh, I can find him. I couldn't. I didn't want to pay for nothing. And the one profile that seemed to match my father the best, it was still off. Like, date of birth was right, everything, you know, the time he came, but it was like his middle name was off. So I was like, this can't be the right person. And I don't, like, why would I have to pay for all these different people to not even be my family members, you know? The Ancestry is constantly updating their DNA results. So at first when I got it, I'll show you them, the first couple of ones, and then the last one that's up to date as of July. So when I first got it, it said I was like 14% Native American. And as far as this result, as far as July 2020 results, it's completely gone out of my DNA results. So according to Ancestry. Honestly, for me personally, I don't like that. I'm like, either like it is what I am or it isn't. Like, I just, why is there constant updating? I understand the more people apply, the more genetic testing you can do, the more genes you're able to compare and contrast and like narrow down which genes are associated with whichever ethnicity. But like how can it go from like 14% Native American to 0%? That jump, I just don't understand.
So Ancestry does have an app where it's similar to the website. You know, anything that's being converted from a website to an application on your phone, obviously some things are not going to be able to transfer over nicely or won't even be included. But it's pretty similar to the website as well. So the results, exploring the traits, exploring other people's backgrounds and immigrant paperwork and stuff like that, you can do that on the app as well.
So now moving on to 23andMe. Now this is probably going to be the big daddy of the video and the large portion, because it was $200 and it came with a lot of information. It was for like a substantial amount of information. Those people are working back there. So with 23andMe, you get a multitude of different aspects of your DNA and a lot of information. But the first thing I want to talk about is the DNA breakdown. So with 23andMe, they broke it down into 5 different categories and regions, pretty much. So the major regions, and obviously it breaks it down further than that and more categories. So the 5 major categories are European, Sub-Saharan African, East Asian and Native American, Western Asian and North African, and finally unassigned. So since AncestryDNA didn't break it down between like European versus the African versus, you know, other like East Asian and stuff like that, I did it myself, and roughly it was a breakdown like of 50% European and like 32% African and stuff like that. In comparison to 23andMe, I am 50.5% European, 34.8% Sub-Saharan African, 7.4% East Asian and Native American, 1.6% Western Asian and North African, and 5.7% unassigned. From that 50% plus European category, I'm 34.5% Spanish and Portuguese. The other 8% is broadly Southern European, and these regions include Italy, Balkan Peninsula, Island of Malta. So the remaining 4% is Northwestern European. British and Irish is 0.7. French and German, which is 0.3. Broadly Northwestern, which is 3.1, which includes Norway and Finland in those regions. The subcategory of Europe is also Eastern Europe, which is 0.7%, and the regions include Southeast Baltic Sea. Ashkenazi Jewish, which is 0.2%, and lastly it's broadly European, which is 3%. So anytime broadly is in front of another region or stuff like that, it's basically the DNA is difficult to pinpoint specifically what region, so they try to narrow down as much as possible, but still within the broad spectrum of those regions. Okay, so moving on to the African side. So the second major category is Sub-Saharan African, which again is 34.8%. So 28.2% of that is West African. Of that 28.2%, 10.9% of that is Nigerian, 8.6% of that is Guyana, Liberian, and Sierra Leone. I'm so sorry. 4.7% of that is Senegambanian and Guinea. 4% of that is broadly West African. So the remaining of that 34.8% is 4.6%, and this region goes to the Congolese and Southern East African. So 2.1% of that is Angolan Ghanaians, 1.4% of that is Southern East African, 1.1% of that is broadly Ghanaians and Southern East Africa. The other second major categories within 34.8% is broadly Northern East Africa, which is 0.1%, and broadly Sub-Saharan, which is 1.9%. So on the pie chart that you're going to see, I only included the most broken down regions. Genetics can get really confusing, and honestly, just to even unlock my trees, like I had to read a few things. Y'all just scroll to the bottom. I took enough classes. I'm sorry. I took enough classes. I know a little bit about this. So I just scrolled to the bottom. But to even unlock my health traits, I had to read a couple things and be like, okay, you need to know this before you can unlock this part. So you don't go self-diagnosing yourself, pretty much. They're just trying to cover their behinds. Because they're like, oh, you have BRCA1 gene, BRCA2 gene. And then the person is like, I'm going to develop cancer. Like, I can see it now. You know, people are just... So they have to put out this little informational blur before they'll tell you what your genetics tell about you, kind of thing, or what you're predisposed to. The third major category is East Asian and Native American, which is 7.4%. Of that 7.4%, 6.6% of that is Native American, and 0.8% is broadly East Asian and Native American. So the reason why they're both linked together, East Asian and Native American, is because according to 23andMe, they have common ancestors. Well, the next major category is the Western Asian and North African, which is 1.6%. So of that 1.6%, 0.1% is Northwest Asian. So in the chart, it's going to be Kai Parak. Okay. And the last remaining 1.5 of that is broadly Western Asian and North African. So the reason that these two are categorized together is because they have deep linguistic and genetic connections according to 23andMe. And lastly, 5.7% of that is just unassigned. So similar to Ancestry, it's not a part of the entire DNA genetic composition, but it does show that I have Caribbean ancestors, which is correct. And that was one thing, side note, because when I first received my results for AncestryDNA, and there was no affiliation to like Cuba, I was like, oh, somebody lied to me. But like, honestly, I'm the spitting image of my father, so like, no question there. In 23andMe, it noted Puerto Rico, Cuba, and Dominican Republic as Caribbean ancestors. So they ranked it to highly likely, which was Puerto Rico, to likely, which was Cuba, and Dominican Republic. And with each community, they list 10 top regions that are more likely to be associated with your DNA. There's like 34 different traits that are shown in your genetic composition that suggests you're more likely to have one over the other. Where, like, for example, freckles, dimples, you know, what type of color hair you're gonna have, what type of eye color you're gonna have, things like that. So out of the 34, only 4 or 5 of them There's like a cilantro aversion. I honestly, I can tolerate cilantro, but I've never had cilantro by itself to determine whether I was able to detect the soapy taste to it. So that's why I say 4 or 5, which is honestly not that bad. Since we're talking about the traits, let's go over the 5 that they got wrong. So the first one is bitter taste. So it says, according to my genetics, it reveals that I'm unlikely to detect certain bitter tastes. Bitter taste like includes like Brussels sprouts and broccoli, and I actually do taste that and I don't like them. Okay, so the next 2 are within the same category. So it was hair texture and hair thickness. So basically it said that my hair texture was likely to be straight and or wavy, and it is certainly not. This is done from a blow dryer and a flat iron and 2 hours of hard work from me. It also said that my hair thickness was likely to be thin, which is again wrong. My hair is very thick, which is why it takes me so long to get it done, and very curly, like it's straight from the roots. Lastly, it was the wake up time for me, sis. They said that I was likely to wake up at 8:45 in the morning on a day off. Sis, I will wake up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon if I don't have to get up. You're bugging. And then it gives you like a range from like 20 years old to 60 years old, and it just kept getting earlier and earlier and earlier. It went from 8:45 in the morning in your 20s to like 6:44 a.m. in your 60s, my guy. And I'm like, lies. So the same thing that's similar to the AncestryDNA relatives, 23andMe also does. So the next 2 major categories that 23andMe get into are the health predisposition and the carrier status. So as far as carrier status, they test like 44 different diseases, rare diseases, anything that you could potentially have that have been shown in the past as genetic markers. They detected nothing, thankfully, so I'm not going to go over it. Moving on to health predisposition, they test 14 different predispositions, which include the BRCA1 and BRCA2 gene, which is the genetic markers for breast cancer. So the one thing that was found in my DNA was the predisposition to hereditary hemochromatosis. So it basically means that you're absorbing way too much iron. Okay, so that is everything. Oh my god, it was so much information, y'all. I feel like my voice got deeper and deeper and deeper. Also, I'm tired and I'm filming this at like midnight, so excuse me and I'm sorry. So as far as the 23andMe, let's start with the dislikes. I felt like the information was a little bit too overwhelming, where it's like, I don't want to read all this. This feels like an entire novel or textbook. So I didn't read like 90% of it, but it is interesting if you want to look deeper into your DNA and stuff like that. The next thing I didn't like was the $200 price tag. That is a bit outrageous. It's very expensive, but I feel like it is worth it for the information that you get. The next thing, they tried to charge an additional $30. It was optional, obviously, but they tried to charge you an additional $30 for everything put into a book. The things I did like is how it categorized, unlike Ancestry, it categorized the regions, like European and African, and subcategories and subsets and stuff like that, your breakdown of your DNA. I really did appreciate that. But I wish they give you an option to like display it by like percentages, because that's what I ended up doing. I made 2 separate pie charts, one with the breakdown of how they broke it down in 23andMe, and the second one broken down by the number value. Another thing I did enjoy is you are updated basically, like, I'm being dramatic, but like minute by minute, like everything that they're doing, they'll let you know. And now let's move on to Ancestry. The first thing is it's much cheaper comparable to the $200, and it's quite similar results. And you know, if that's all you want is your DNA breakdown, then go for the $100 Ancestry. So one thing that was cool that I did like is the ability to actually access it. Even though you have to pay for it, they do give you a much easier route to access and search for these documents. Within the same vein, I don't like that you have to try to pay for each individual document, or, you know, subscribe for the monthly subscription to unlock these documents. You know, it was a bit much. Is the amount of information. I feel like the amount of information in the Ancestry is a lot less compared to the amount of information you're getting in 23andMe. I would like the ability to learn all the information that is being presented in the 23andMe versus the Ancestry. With the Ancestry, it's very limited information. So if you ask me, which nobody did, but I'm going to put up this video anyways, which one I would recommend getting, it would be the 23andMe. Honestly, even though the price tag is pretty much, I feel like it's a lot of information and research that's behind your result. So yeah, that's everything. If you watch this video all the way through, comment down a little test tube, like, comment, subscribe, because YouTube makes me say this. And yeah, bye.